Welcome back to the Whatnauts review show number 224, where each week we have a different story to talk about. Could be a movie, could be a comic, could be an anime, manga, who knows what. We read it, we watch it, we come back here and we discuss it. My name is Kyle Springer and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you?
I'm good. How's your weekend been?
It's been good so far. We were planning to go to the state fair yesterday, but it started to rain. So we were like, let's go tomorrow instead. So that's our plan for today is to go to the state fair.
What will you eat?
I have no idea. I'm personally a funnel cake type of guy. Like I need a good funnel cake. You might catch me out there double fist in the cotton candy. You know, something like that. Who knows, though?
Those are the two accessories the Kyle action figure comes with, is two cotton candies.
With real cotton candy action. So, yeah. How's your weekend been, though?
It's good. I went to 2 movies in addition to the third movie I saw on like Monday. So it's a big theater week for me.
Wow. Okay. I know you went to go see The Woman King. We talked about that on the Captain's Log. What else did you go see?
We went to go see Don't Worry, Darling, which I think looks very good. Like, I really dig the production design of that film. Even if it doesn't stick the landing, I still enjoyed my time. And another movie that is visually stunning, but only okay story-wise. I went to the 3D re-release of Avatar because I'd never seen Avatar. I missed that cultural boat. And I'm like, thank goodness it's back in theaters. I can see it the way everybody else saw it in 2009. And I didn't.
There you go. There you go. Are you aware of all of the drama that is happening around Don't Worry, Darling?
I know that there is drama. Nobody has told me I'm required to know anything that's happening around the movie in order to see the movie. They didn't give me like a quiz when I got to the theater.
No, yeah, there's a lot of drama. I've heard a quick explanation. I'm not gonna go into it here, but it's bizarre. It's wild. All sorts of stuff with that. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
No.
This week, Melissa, we got some giant kaiju to talk about because we are talking about a comic book called Kaijumax, written and drawn by Zander Cannon. And if I'm not mistaken, this was published on Oni Press that put this book out. This is our end of the month special. It's a book that we are going to read in its entirety throughout the next couple months here. So at the end of each month, with a small caveat for October here. The
end of the month might be Halloween. You may have heard of this.
Yeah.
You may be familiar that the final day in October is Halloween.
Just
and we spend Halloween on Halloween things.
Yeah. We like to spend October doing Halloween things all month long, which means we will get to our part 2 of Kaijumax coverage at the start of November. And then our third and final part of Kaijumax will be at the end of November. So be on the lookout for more Kaijumax down the road. But here today, we are discussing the first 2 volumes, volume 1 and 2, which I believe they call them seasons. So season 1 and 2. This is all available on Comixology Unlimited. If you are a subscriber to that, as well as Kindle Unlimited, I believe you can get it there as well. This is it's all on Comixology Unlimited, but it's a little bit confusing. They have the first 5 collected volumes, if I'm not mistaken. That 6th one right now you can only get in single issues, but they're on there on Comixology Unlimited. But then they also have these 2 like deluxe editions, where deluxe edition volume 1 collects the first 2 volumes and gives like a director commentary kind of footnotes at the bottom. They only have the first 2 of those, so they're still missing that third one. So they have a mix and match assortment of stuff.
Next month, we don't get to read any more director's notes. We're done with those. We ran out.
No. Next month we read volumes 2 and volumes 3 and 4. So the director's cut volume 2 would cover those.
Okay.
Yeah.
But our final episode, we're noteless. We're adrift in a sea.
Yeah, we're like, we can read that collected edition volume 5 and then the single issues of volume 6. It's all very confusing. But volumes 1 and 2 or collected the deluxe edition volume 1 is what we read for this week here. So Kaijumax. I love the pitch of this book. It's a prison story, but all the prisoners are giant monsters. They're kaiju. And I think what surprised me is that it's not just like, oh, you have some Godzilla knockoffs, you have some like King Ghidorah knockoff. Like, it's not just that. Like you got your mecha kaiju, you got your Godzilla like kaiju, you got your just giant monster, like not really anything in particular monster. You have your Cthulhu mythology monsters in the air. There's giant mechs. I have a big giant mech fan. There's like Ultraman looking characters that act as the guards. All sorts of stuff. So if you like kaiju, if you like Super Sentai styled stuff, if you like Ultraman, you like Gundam, you like Macross, all that stuff, this is a book you might want to check out. But the plot of this book is pretty simple. It is just here's a prison story filled with giant monsters. Melissa, do you want to help me out with a synopsis of these first 2 volumes here?
Our main prisoner who we are following is named Electrogor, and he has a particular concern in getting out of Kaijumax because he's got 2 kids on the outside. He's a single father. His kids don't know he were nabbed. Basically, it's as soon as these heroes spot you, they take you in. There's no trial process. There's no notification of next of kin. You are just nabbed and thrown onto this remote island. So he's like, my kids don't know where I went. I got to get out there. I got to make sure like they're healthy, they're safe, they have food. I was the one providing for them. So it's about him trying to find ways to like get a message to the outside, or he has these like uranium orbs that come out of his back and like that's what his kids eat. So he's like, is there anybody I trust, like any prisoner who's leaving, any guard I can maybe trust to like get these out to my kids? And then uranium is one of the drugs on the inside.
It's
so then he's
irradiated.
also like it's like a drug source he's like selling off to other people. And there's gang fights, there's interpersonal drama. There's no larger plot to speak of necessarily beyond that our one protagonist's one goal. It's very soap opera-y, which is how the writer describes it. Like there's all this soap opera category nonsense of different romances, different rivalries, which is very compelling, but it does put you in an interesting boat to where I don't know exactly what we're in store for the next couple volumes that we read. Like, I don't know what the end game of the book is going to be.
Yeah, or what new plot they introduce, what new, like, interesting, like, this isn't good for Electrogor or for Mechazon or for whoever, right? Like, no matter what happens in the book, it could be a good or bad thing for one of the characters, at least. So it at least keeps things new and interesting all the time. But yeah, there is no like one main larger plot except for Electrogor and his story. His is the one that kind of ends up being on top, but it's still not necessarily, it's not like fully the A plot. It's like half an A plot.
Yeah, like he really shares the spotlight with a lot of other characters. And for this second like collected volume we were reading, we spent a lot of time away from him, which is kind of a nice break. Not that I don't like him as a protagonist, but we get to like go over to the women's prison and spend a lot of time there, which I really liked. I think it's a great book for like the writer knows when you want to change things up and see something different and see a different angle and like go to a different setting and hang out with a different character for a while. It doesn't stick you in one place for too long. It moves very well. So,
based on something you said, I think you read the second collected, the second deluxe edition. You read both of the deluxe editions, which means that's volumes 1 through 4 is collected in those two. Yes, because we haven't gotten to the women's prison yet.
How much was I supposed to have read?
Volumes 1 and 2, which is collected inside the first deluxe edition.
I thought we were doing 2 deluxe editions a month. And then the final month, like we just had a bunch of assorted issues.
There's
so I was only supposed to read
total.
up Oh my God.
There would
Carl,
be
you needed to draw me a diagram. You can't tell me these things.
I told you it's all confusing how it's collected. There's 6 volumes in this story in total. We were to read the first 2 volumes for this month, which is collected in the deluxe edition volume 1. So there should be 3 deluxe editions in total. So we only need to cover up to trying to figure out a way. There's a certain character is reunited, and there's a big explosion. That's kind of the end of the book of what we need to discuss this time. Yeah. Melissa's stunned. You are ahead on the reading.
I spent so much time reading this week. I spent hours reading this week to get prepped for this episode. And I was thinking, boy, what a wordy, dense comic. I like this, but this is very time consuming. And it's time consuming because I accidentally did twice the work.
Yeah, because you mentioned it on one of our other podcasts that you were like, this is a very dense book. And then I got into it. And I was like, it's not, I mean, it's maybe a little wordy, but it's not that dense. Like we only have to, read these first 2 volumes. Like it's not that bad. And the deluxe edition has these footnotes on the bottom, which is what you were referring to, which act as these like director's commentary. Like I think the artwork on this page really started to come together. Like my process, really hit this one thing, or who knows what. But that is kind of what makes it dense. Like it's not necessary for the story, and I skipped most of them. But there are some neat tidbits in there that point out parts of his process or like references. Like I really wanted the design of this monster to look like this thing, or this certain line is a line from this real obscure kaiju movie that I have no idea what it is, or that like the relationship between this kaiju and that kaiju is kind of the same relationship that I was going for with these 2 characters and stuff like that. So there is some really, really neat stuff. But yeah, that is what makes it dense in that. So you're smooth sailing for the start of November.
But we're not going to do this for another 5 weeks, which means I'm going to have to come back and like flip through everything again.
Just take some light notes to like jog your memory and stuff like that. Yeah.
5 weeks from now, let's see if I remember what the name Go-Go Space Baby even means.
See, I don't even know what that means. But yes, Kaijumax. That is kind of the story and the plot, though, right? Like it is just about these monsters' lives within this prison and just how the prison works, all the relationships, all the gangs, the corruption of the guards and stuff like that. Do you have any other kind of non-spoilery stuff that you want to add?
I don't know how to say it now because I didn't remember like what happens in the split between volumes. I'm just not going to say anything pre-spoiler break.
Okay. Well,
come back to me later.
I will say is as I think, yeah, if you are into kaiju and mechs and all that stuff, like go check out this book. But it is as much as I can tell that it is like lovingly made and crafted, I do have some issues with the book. There are some things about it that I feel just kind of end up being cumbersome about it.
Mm-hmm.
But man, if nothing else, you can tell that Zander Cannon is having a blast making this. Which I look, comics are fun. Like it's just, like at the end of the day, this book is just fun. That's the thesis of our show. Comics are fun. Yeah.
And even for like, I'm not super into either the kaiju or the prison genres, but to see the amount of passion and care and attention to detail on the page and to get those director's notes fleshing it out for you, it is a really special, compelling reading experience.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there you go. Those are our spoiler-free thoughts on Kaijumax, volumes 1 and 2. So that being said, we will take a quick break for housekeeping, and then when we get back, we will dive into spoilers, and we can finally clue Melissa in on where we should stop discussing the book here. We'll be right back. We put a lot of hard work into the shows that we make, and yes, we make multiple different shows here at the Whatnauts, and we'd love it if you check them all out. You can find out more information on our website at thewhatnauts.com.
So if you're like, I don't like this one thing, I can tell you if he keeps doing that.
When you type in the Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right
I could have sworn
Just
it was
don't
like
forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows.
If you want to support what we do here at the Whatnauts,
Patreon.com/thewhatnauts is the best place to do that. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. You can get all kinds of exclusive content at the $3 tier. You can also get a shout out and a thank you.
See, I thought there were 6 of those. That's
tier.
where I went wrong.
You can support us on Twitch by subscribing to our channel at twitch.tv/thewhatnauts. And we would love to have you all join us for
this
our
is
live
really
streams
long.
and talk with us in the chat. And lastly, we have merch. If you'd like to grab yourself a shirt or a sweatshirt or a mug or something else, go to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. And we are back. A big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Cool things that we've been up to here at the Whatnauts. Of course, here on the review show last week, we also covered a comic book called Once and Future by Karen Gillen, with art by Dan Mora and colors by Tamara Bonvillain. That book was fantastic if you're into Arthurian myth and stuff like that and stories coming to life. Please go check all that stuff out. On the Captain's Log, one of our other podcasts, what did we do last week? It was,
we talked about movies that formed us in various ways. It was a good conversation.
Yeah. Movies that were formative or had like a big ones that emotionally moved you, not necessarily your like top favorite movies of all time, but ones that like, what ones hit you in the gut, what ones like made you the person you are today. So that's what we talked about last week on the Captain's Log. For this next week on the Captain's Log, we're basically going to be making some kind of top 10 list. More details on that to come when we actually make the show. But essentially, we're going to be making a combined top 10 list of something and then arguing what the order, what the rank of that list should be of those individual things on there. So it could be our favorite superheroes, could be our favorite I forget what we decided. It was like fast food.
It is fast food restaurants, Kyle, defined as any restaurant that includes a drive-through.
There you go.
So you and I are each going to come to the table with 5 and then some backups so that we have got a distinct list of 10 fast food restaurants. And then the bulk of the episode is, I hope not an argument, but a polite debate about how to rank these things and who goes to number 1, who's king of the hill. Indeed.
And then on the Reactor Core, we just recorded our reactions to the first three of Star Wars Andor. That is up on our YouTube page and as a podcast for the Whatnauts Reactor Core. We will be doing that in chunks of 3, so you won't see us for another 3 weeks, and then we'll put out our episodes 4 through 6 on that stuff. But in the meantime, Melissa, you and I are reacting to She-Hulk week to week. So that will be a lot of fun. I know there'll be some more reactions and stuff coming up down the road. We got Werewolf by Night at the start of October, all sorts of stuff. So be on the lookout for all of that. But that is about it for housekeeping. So let us get into spoilers. All right. So yeah, we haven't reached the women's prison yet. I should say. So volume 2 basically ended with Electrogor getting back to his kids, finding them, and then seeing that his oldest daughter has now like evolved and changed and is like having to go out and find food and do all that stuff. But she has her own system on how to not get caught. And it's kind of shocking and appalling to Electrogor of like what she has to do to make it work. And they end up kind of all getting caught. And there's this big giant explosion. And that's kind of where the book ends. I forget if that was like the exact like last bit, but that is like the last big thing.
I do remember that. When you're reading these like big collected director's notes volumes, it gives you each individual like chapter, like your chapter 1, chapter 2. It doesn't tell you this is where volume 1 would have ended and volume 2 would have started. I think that's also something that confused me. I'm like, well, this is all just one volume, I guess. And Kyle told me we're reading 2 volumes a month.
Yeah. So that's so yeah. As we said, mostly the book follows Electrogor, at least in these first 2 volumes, and it's about him trying to get back to his kids. He feels like he's there by mistake, like he just got nabbed up and couldn't tell his kids they weren't there when he got arrested, so they just think he left. Like he just disappeared. So he's been trying to get back to them, but he's not the only character we follow. There's multiple gangs within the prison. We follow some of the guards too. We follow the warden. We follow one of the guards who's like selling drugs in the prison. We follow one like mecha Godzilla like monster who has turned to this this religion that is typically like more reserved for the mechas of the bunch.
Yeah,
But is
it's
open to
very
whoever. It sounded like.
It's very tech based. Like they worship a cloud, the
Yes.
data cloud.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's these different factions of kaiju within the prison. You've got like the mecha ones, the like very classic Japanese Godzilla style ones, anything that's a space alien, and then cryptids. The world of like cryptids, urban legends, myths, stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
Mothman style
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, a Bigfoot, things like that. And then yeah, the mechs have this religious aspect to them. They're worshiping the cloud, and we don't get a storyline where they reach out to somebody else and somebody does say, you know what? Yeah, I think I do want to side with the mechs. I'm interested in what they're doing, and like, how would they open a non-mech up to this very mech-based religion? Like, how does just a big dinosaur connect with the cloud if they're not a computer like you are?
Yeah, they can't really upload their consciousness.
Yeah.
Or is there some kind of process that they go through to mechanicize them? What would be the word?
Cyborg them.
Yeah, how do you cyborg them? That's the correct medical term. Yeah, there must be some kind of process for that. But it is interesting because the one that we do follow, Mechazon, his father is very disappointed in him for turning to this religion, because this religion is very peaceful. It is non-violent, where the father is disappointed because he built Mechazon to be this kind of police, like this monster that fights against monsters. It has weapons galore. It has all kinds of rockets and missiles and lasers and all that stuff. But with this new religion, he's like ignoring those programming. And so yeah, there is this like weird robot sentience that is kind of mirrored by this, like, either it's Christianity or Islamic, just this like faith-based story of like, no, I'm gonna turn the other cheek and just like be a better person, and do all of that stuff. So there is some really interesting facets just within this story that I think you can get kicks out of all sorts of stuff in here, whether it's the design of the monsters, what's happening in the prison, the characters, their relationships, all sorts of stuff. Let me ask you this off the bat here. What was the thing that surprised you the most, that you weren't expecting, but yeah, maybe found like you got some kick out of, or a good laugh, or was like, oh, that's neat?
How deep the author went on inventing a vocabulary for this world. How everything is a stand-in for something that like a real prison would have, down to making these like sort of cultural names people would have for each other. You know, like there's so much lingo. There's so many nicknames. There's so much phraseology that he has invented, and so much like visually that's happening. Like these are huge monsters, so there have to be huge real world objects around for them to interact with as if they were small objects. Like instead of smoking a cigarette, he has full smokestacks off of like factories, and like that's what they use as cigarettes. Like that attention to detail, how he needed to find a kaiju sized version of everything visually and linguistically, is really impressive.
Just the attention to detail, the imagination to come up with all of that is just like, man, you reached for the stars. Like you went above and beyond on everything. And yeah, on one hand, that's amazing. This is kind of also the one thing that I was like, this kind of gets cumbersome. To read all of these, like this new slang and lingo and the way they say things, I feel like he starts to trip over himself in just the way, like, it on certain things it can come across cheesy. On certain things it's just like, wow, I would have never thought of that. That's so cool. On certain things it's like, I don't know about this. It feels maybe slightly racist or something like that. But then there is stuff that's like, yeah, I guess if they are a different species or they're from another planet, they might not have a word for this thing. They don't know, like, they don't have a word for big, right? Because they are big. Everything is small to them, right? They, like, you would need to find some kind of substitute for that. Like, there is, like, really, really interesting things in there that I appreciate the depths to which he went. But yeah, some, like, I often found myself, once I figured out, like, okay, this word means this thing or that thing, just mentally, whenever I saw that word, I'd be like, okay, it's what was the word? It was like ambergris or ambergris. I was like, oh, he like, just means shit. So, like, whenever I saw that word, I was just like, okay, like, in my head, it just read as shit. And so it feels like it feels like he did all of this work, and then I'm kind of sweeping it to the side to be like, just say the word. Like, come on.
I think I do really appreciate the work that put into this, but there could be fewer of these things. And some of them, like, I understand the cleverness. Like, all the monsters call humans squishers. Like, you get that very easily right away.
Yeah.
But a lot of the humans will call monsters cloakers, which is a bastardization of cloaca. If they're a monster based on a type of animal that would have a cloaca, that's what they call it. Which I get it. But, like, if I didn't have that director's footnote, I would have never untangled that.
Yeah, absolutely. That would have been over my head.
And this is a world that is so, like, all of this is normal. You know, this isn't like a secret prison. I think everybody in this world is aware there's giant monsters all over the place. So there's no inside character. Like, there's no audience perspective character for you to follow. Like, once you're new to the prison, like, Electrogor has all this stuff about the prison explained to him, but, like, all the lingo, all the monster-human relations and, like, monster-to-monster relationships, that's already taken as a given across the entire world. So if you didn't have these director's footnotes, I don't know. You would have to be, like, an expert. Like, you would have to be a kaiju PhD, I wonder, to read this on your own and not be confused.
Yeah. Because I don't think I've ever heard the word ambergris or whatever it is. I'm pronouncing that incredibly wrong. It comes out of Wales. But
that's like in old Moby Dick days when they would go get whales for the whale oil. That is the whale oil, ambergris. They would, like, put it in perfumes and in, like, oil lanterns and things.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, see that. I mean, that's something I didn't know, but, like, I figured it out. That's like, okay, it seems like this means shit. It means, and then, like, okay, that seems to fit. It seems to fit. It's still fitting. Okay, cool. That's the word. Context. Hell yeah. But yeah, like, it's this, like, two side of the coin thing again. Because at the end of the day, like, man, it's so inventive. It's so cool, just the amount of detail that's in there and references to certain things. Like, besides just the language and lingo, even the designs of the monsters or the mechs, those footnotes would be like, yeah, I designed this monster to look like this thing or to be a legally distinct version of this thing. And there's some of them that I'm just like, I don't know what monster you're even referring to
right.
Here, dude. Like, I don't know what that is. I'm not as big of a kaiju fan yet. I like them, but I've not, like, that's been my goal this year on the podcast is to get more kaiju content, so I know this stuff. But even, like, the mechs and stuff, there was one time that I was like, oh, that looks like the mech from this thing. And then I looked down in the front note and he was like, that mech is supposed to look like the mech from this thing. I was like, haha, I got it right.
Mechs you do know.
Yeah, and like that, like I was able to get some of that stuff, or even just knowing that, like when the guards have to go into the prison and they like size up and they look like they're big, like monster size selves. They all have these like Ultraman style uniforms, like that. I knew, like that. I could get and stuff like that, but. Yet there's some things I'm just like, man, these references are so obscure that I don't know how much pointing them out helps. If that makes sense, because it's just like cool. I don't know what that is, but sweet.
Like, yeah, like whether or not that monster is a completely original Zander Cannon creation, or if Zander Cannon made it based off of like Gamera versus Space Gamera 2 from 1973. Like I don't know what to do. You might as well have made up that footnote. Like I can't prove that's not fictional.
To be fair, again, we don't know that much about our knowledge and lore isn't all. So a lot of this stuff is just like, oh well. But I know that there are people out there who obsess over this stuff and will get a lot more of those, or see him do a reference to something and be like, oh, like I didn't get that at first, but that's interesting. That's brilliant, right? Like I feel like there's a layer to this book that enthusiasts above us who like know all of that stuff would be like, this guy's on to something here, right?
My favorite little piece of lingo and in-joke that doesn't come up often, but it's a derogatory name used towards some of the space aliens, where other types of monsters will call them shumways. Do you know what that's a reference to?
Not at all.
You know ALF.
Yeah.
ALF is an acronym for alien life form. Okay. Like, that's what the people around Alf call him, but that's not his name. His name from the space planet Melmac he comes from, his given name is Gordon Shumway.
That's funny.
That's really specific. That is a really good reference.
I did see there was another thing in there like that, like E.T., like, again, we called him E.T. because he's an extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
But, like, the actual species name is, like, somehow in some Star Wars thing. I think the footnote said, and it's mentioned in this book, too, that there's, like, one of those monsters here and there. And it's just, like, he's pulling from everything. Right. And that's so cool.
He's making in-jokes about other in-jokes. Like, yes, in one of the Star Wars prequels, in like the big galactic Senate scenes, you see a bunch of the aliens that E.T. is. And I forget how you pronounce their name, but it's Spielberg spelled backwards.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. Right?
It goes so many levels deep. This book is subterranean.
It really is. Yeah. So one of the things that I was not expecting is I think all of the like Super Sentai the Ultraman style outfits that we got to see the guards do. That was something that I honestly didn't think about when I had heard the pitch of this book, is just how the guards would deal with the monsters. Like, do they have the military there? Are there tanks lining is it like Destroy All Monsters, where they have this big force field around the islands? Which, hang on, I've seen that movie because we've covered it here on the show.
That one we did.
Kind of what they do, right? They do have a big old force field around the island. But I was not expecting these like Ultraman style outfits, so that if they need to go in the prison and break up a fight or something like that, they can be the same size as these kaiju. I thought that was really, really cool. And then also to see that there are these like outside military forces, divisions, organizations, I'm not sure what they are, that have these big long acronyms. I don't think we ever got a great explanation of what the acronyms meant.
I don't think we need to know what Team Heroism stands for, but I like that it's there. I love that you can just throw some periods into a name and make it an acronym, and that does so much world building, even if you never spell out what the acronym is.
Right, yeah. But yeah, there are these like more militarized peacekeeping forces that are meant to take down and arrest kaiju, right? Like they are like, okay, you might have the like Sentai stuff and they have some armor in there, but if you're out in the open and these guys are using their like nuclear breath and stuff like that, like you need things to fight them. So they have these like giant mechs that they use to go fight them, whether it's a like humanoid looking robot and it's something that looks like a Gundam or a Voltron kind of thing, where it's something that looks like half plane, but it has legs like in Macross, like stuff like that. It's just like they have all these guns and weapons and these big long acronyms for Team Great, Team Heroism, Team Saves the Day, right? Like all sorts of stuff. Like I was not expecting that, and for us to get storylines kind of like outside of the prison too about some of those characters, and the like it walks an interesting balance, especially in today's world where we've had the Black Lives Matter protests, and we've seen I think America has now seen a lot more police brutality in the mainstream. It's not something that they have been able to keep hidden as much as they have in the past. And I think seeing these stories about some of these police officers or these military people who have the PTSD and are either now like unsure if what they're doing is right, or go on the deep end and be like, well, if that's how it's going to be, like I'm gonna go all out and let's destroy them all, and who cares, and stuff like that. Like there's all sorts of very, very real stories in here that can be interesting. Maybe you're not as interested in them, but there's just so many facets of a prison story that I don't think I was super expecting. Like I think I was expecting this to take place entirely in the prison. But from the get-go, they're like, no, we'll show you some stuff, what's happening on the outside. Seems like the prison is also maybe losing funds, or they like all of that. And they just had someone escape, and they just had this. And so the warden is worried about like all this stuff. And they're being like, there's someone coming to inspect and see if they get the budget. And like, there's all sorts of just like, I wasn't expecting this kind of story in Kaijumax here, but here we go.
And I think
fun stuff.
The writer does make a note about how this is a study on how this very flawed system can have a negative impact on so many people's lives, including like a guard who was called on to this extra mission to like for a drug bust. Basically, this is the only time you see something like that, if the guard's doing like an extracurricular activity outside of traditional guard work, but like as part of this Team Great military type organization, like they have to go bust like a drug lab, and he's like terrified of these like giant monsters, and like he panics and like shoots them, you know, the second he sees one, even though it like he wasn't really in danger. And it's a story about how he's really affected by that, like really ashamed of what he did and still living in fear of all these monsters. And he's got this PTSD he's dealing with, and when he goes to his big form, his big Ultraman form, he doesn't want to go back to small form. Like he's rarely back in small form, and it's a story about how that's taking a toll on him mentally and physically.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, it just like this starts to bring up one of the other, like I hesitate to say the word issue with the book or stuff, because I feel like, again, it's one of those like two sides of the coin thing, is where he is telling some very, very deep stories about trauma as well as racial biases and stuff like that. Like, this guy's inherent fear of these kaiju is a one-for-one mirror of a white person like me who might be scared of these of a black person, of some kind of minority who might appear to look like they are a criminal or they have some kind of criminal past, right? Like there are people out there who live like that, and that's not a good thing. But then he's also trying to that's the thing. I don't think Zander is trying to necessarily get you to empathize with that character, but I feel like he's walking a balance on that. Like he's telling these very deep stories, but he's also not super focusing on any one in particular. And then on top of that, the artwork is very cartoony. It's and I mean this in the best way possible. It's very childlike. It's colorful. It's inventive. Like I love all of that stuff. But yeah, to juxtapose these very real, very heavy stories with this more cartoony artwork, I'm wondering if it undermines some of the effect that these stories could have. Or on the other hand, maybe it's a way to kind of make these stories a little bit more palatable for maybe someone of a younger audience. Not that I would necessarily say this is a kid's book.
Not
it's
at all.
It's not, but it's like maybe for a teen or something like to start to introduce them to some much more heavy topics and stuff like that. Like this might be a better way to do that. I don't know. Just some interesting, like it's more like I'm wrestling. Like I like the artwork, I like the stories, but I don't know if they go hand in hand. But I also think that's done on purpose to an extent, and it works. But it's all like it's a lot more complicated than I think it appears to be.
Yeah, I really appreciate this mix of two very opposite or unrelated genres of kaiju and prison stories.
Yeah.
And how inventive Zander Cannon is putting them together and like making these metaphorical matchups. But there are places where it doesn't exactly line up to the real world. Like I could understand that one of the human guards is scared that a monster will vaporize them, and no human being in our world is going to vaporize another human being. Like they, like you can make the monsters a stand-in for humans, but it doesn't really work it the other way. Where like we don't look at any other human being in our world and be like, "Oh, you're a monster. You're like some space alien who can shoot a beam at me."
Yeah. I hope I'm articulating that in a good way here. I feel like I'm not, because there are some issues here that I don't necessarily know exactly how to articulate those well. But yeah, it's an interesting story, to say the least. Let's talk a little bit more about the artwork and some of these character designs and stuff, because there's some cool monsters. Did you have a favorite monster, or like visual look to one of these guys?
I think one of my favorite things in the artwork is we talked about Mechazon, who is like a Mecha Godzilla, basically. Yeah. And we meet Mechazon first, and his inventor father figure talks about how he built him as a copy to defeat this actual monster called Zon. And later we meet Zon, and it's fun to see how you started with the mecha version, and then you have to walk back and figure out what would the actual like organic version of this robot look like.
Yeah.
And then you meet Zon, who is, I think this is a story that does well in giving empathetic facets to different characters, even like very rough characters. Zon is the one truly bad guy in the story. Zon is a bad dude. He has no redeeming qualities.
And he does not give a fuck.
And he is like the evilest character we have, but he also looks so goofy, but like goofy also in a way that is unnerving. He looks both very silly and very unsettling.
Yeah. And it's like when you meet him, he gets to the prison. He immediately recognizes like some of the people, like he recognizes, I think it's Mechazon he goes up to, right? Is that who's, remember when he's like being brought in, he's like, hold that thought, and then he goes up to someone and he's like, yeah, I know you're the blah 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 who, like, you can't do anything, huh and then the guy's like sits there just like kind of cowering. Was that Mechazon that he went up to?
I don't remember anymore.
That's okay.
I was reading this at a more accelerated pace than you were because I thought I had to read twice as much.
So yeah, there is this scene, like he immediately kind of establishes himself as this very bad dude. And then there is a fight in the shower between Zon and Electrogor, and Electrogor gets messed up pretty bad. It's kind of implied that he gets raped. And it's not mentioned specifically, but there is also this like thing about, though there's now this like egg inside him. That whole thing was strange. But then Zon, it happened real suddenly, but Zon is also like in a relationship with the nurse of the
she's a doctor. Please, Dr. Zhang.
Yeah. Dr.
She went to Kaiju medical school.
She's in some relationship with Zon, and she is kind of neglecting her doctorly duties as a result, and stuff like that, and just like amidst these like real like, oh, this guy is evil, this guy is bad, there is this like, but he looks goofy, and now there's this like sudden romance between Zon and the doctor, and it's like, this is just silly, like what is happening here?
And I think that is one of the benefits of reading this in the format that we did in this like director's commentary version, to where if you're reading a page and you're like, that developed kind of fast, then you'll go to the note at the bottom of the page, and often it is Zander Cannon saying, I realized after this was done that I think it did go too fast. Yeah.
He's like, this was a late addition. That maybe happened a little too fast. It would have been nice if I had one more page to kind of hint at this, and then boom. Yeah.
It is nice that a lot of the things that maybe will get a little sticky for you, you're like, that moved kind of fast. I don't know if that metaphor totally translates. I don't know if that wordplay is like stretching it too far. You'll go to the director's notes, and often he has those same thoughts. Like, I was trying to do this metaphorical thing. I don't know if it totally worked. Or, I was kind of pushing myself to do this. Like, all the things you might see as shortcomings, very minor, inconsequential shortcomings. Sometimes the author's also like, I could have done that better. And other times he's like, this is a really silly in-joke, but I'm very proud of myself for finding a way to put that in. Like all the different emotions in Zander Cannon's footnotes are really great to have that look into.
Yeah. That note, to go back to the language and the lingo and all that stuff they use. I did see one footnote where he was like, like some of the monsters even can't speak English very well.
Yes.
And stuff like that. And so I think it was like between that and some of the like lingo that they do use, he was like, by later seasons in the book, I kind of relaxed that a little bit. So if you were as kind of not put off, but just like, this is kind of an obstacle to read all of this stuff, it looks like he does pump the brakes a little bit. I'm not sure how much that means, but still.
The one thing that is dropped is the conceit that the kaiju can talk to each other and understand each other, but when they're talking to a human, sometimes what the kaiju says will come across as like, me hurt, me need medicine. Like it's very simplified to poor, monstrous English, like a monster you might see it, very Frankensteinian, Frankenstein-like. And he's like, I did eventually drop that. Like, I don't think that really shows up much in the second volume. Okay. But then again, I think it was only when they were like, I think if you're like in the Ultraman form, you can understand the monsters better than if you're in your little normal person form, and we don't see anybody in normal person form as much.
I gotcha.
It does kind of simplify as it goes along.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Yeah, so there's all of that stuff. My favorite monster design, I think was the... what was it? It was the it was when red and green Montego.
Yes!
What were they? What were
were they called like the Humongo?
It was like Humongo or like It was something like that. I forget off the top of my head. But they end up combining to like become this like black, almost Godzilla looking like character with these like spiky plates on its back, but it's pitch black with like white outlines and stuff. It has this real like negative look. Oh, I thought that was so cool. This monster that just seemingly appears out of nowhere to team heroism or whatever it is. And they're just like, we've never seen this guy before. What is this? Where did he come from? He just appeared. And he is destroying things. He is like 30 something stories tall. That was kick ass. I loved that. I was like, this is so cool. I liked that one a lot because by themselves, they just looked like these like almost like Fozzie Bear like style, just real like made of seaweed, like little monster like things. But then when they combined, it was like, oh shit, don't want to fuck with them.
That was fun. I'll say that in the second volume, you do see other colors of the Humongos, but you don't spend a lot of time with them, and there's no further explanation or exploration of how they can combine. I do like that that's something that could be out there.
Yeah.
I really liked that storyline where Electrogor and I think like Green Humongo escape Kaijumax and they go to his brother Red Humongo's the apartment, the equivalent of his apartment, which is like an entire Grand Central Station, to where he's on parole and he's trying to live this really clean life so he doesn't have to go back to Kaijumax. We don't get to spend a lot of time outside in the real world. Sometimes we'll go see like the private home lives of like the guards, or we'll go to like that casino on the moon.
Yeah. Which is also something I was not expecting. There's a casino on the moon? What is happening?
But you don't get a good sense of what normal life is, because this is such an insular, specific story in this one setting. Like, you don't get a good look at like what is like the average citizen of Earth. What is their life experience? What are their thoughts on kaiju? What are their fears? Who are they? And you still don't get a lot of that, but at least you get to go into a city. You get to see like Red Humongo's boss being like an absolute jerk to him. And I did like seeing him go into a city and to have those giant buildings that they are interacting with that you don't have on the island of Kaijumax.
Yeah. Yeah, that was neat. yeah, like it is starting to build not mystery, but just it is building the world in a way that is like, I wonder what else is out there. Like what else
Yeah,
is
exactly.
if they have a casino on the moon, if they have these like government military organizations to bring them in, they have like monster paroles that
Mm.
they can do if they get out of the stuff. Like some of that stuff was neat. But then on the flip side, there was stuff like how is Electrogor hiding behind a building and they don't see him and they don't know he's there? Like that just doesn't make sense. But that's part of the joke too. I think,
yeah.
right? Like it is like, don't you think someone would see this giant like 20-story monster parading around town and call it in? And or these military people have the like satellites or instruments to like read them or track them somehow, and he's just like hiding behind this building like no one can see him, and it is the funniest thing.
Yeah, like there's nobody in the
on.
building who looks out their window and sees like a giant orange dinosaur with glowing green orbs on its back.
Right.
Nobody
like, how does
calls that
work?
into Team Great.
How does that work?
This is a story that I can understand how this might bug somebody, that it is these like ridiculous gags like that, but also trying to tell these very sincere emotional stories that look into the condition of what it's like to be in prison and to have that be such a troubled and troubling system, and how do you get out, how do you fix anything. Like it's doing a lot in one book. A lot is trying to be accomplished.
Yeah. And it's like I don't necessarily think Zander Cannon is trying to present a solution per se, right? But he is just at least trying to expose some of the corruption or some of the ways these systems fail people or benefit the wrong people. Like as much as I did not like the woman that came to inspect the prison, she has one line. Yeah. She had one line in there that I thought made sense. It was something I forget. Like she by all means not a good person and was absolutely trying to like punish these prisoners even more. But she had one line that was like something. I think it was about like when the monsters go back out on the outside and just how like somehow the people on the outside are being punished as a result of stuff like, so like why are we punishing other people and not these prisoners? And like it was some I forget exactly, but it like they're trying to comment and expose some of this stuff, but at the same time have it be a love letter to the genre. Have it be filled with all kinds of jokes and visual gags, and it might underline some of those more meaningful, expose, that's not the right word. There's more like meaningful, just like moments of like, here's a story about PTSD, here's a story about corruption, here's a story about that, right? Might undermine that stuff. So I think you kind of have to take it as one big jumbled mess in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And I think it works, to be honest.
It is compelling. Yeah.
I had a blast writing this. I thought this was such a fun book. It's so inventive. All of that stuff. I was just like, man. And then they escape, and then they go underwater to do all this stuff, and they go like deep down. And there's all the Cthulhu stuff down there. The Elder God's just like, what? There's like multiple layers to it. What is happening? This is so cool.
I do really dig anytime the story gets to have that change in setting and it reveals to us another aspect of the world, like, or like another genre of monsters, like when Electrogor is like trying to hide out from the police essentially, and he swims down into this like very bottom layer of the ocean to hide out, and like that's where all these like elder gods are. Like he goes into the cosmic horror territory.
it's so inventive that as much as I had some issues with it, I was just like, I'm still just having so much fun though. But yeah, good book. I enjoyed this a lot. Go for it.
I want to talk about one of my favorite subplots, which is Ape Whale. Great name. But more specifically, Ape Whale's son, Woofy, who is supposed to be like the real dorky son of Godzilla. And like somebody calls him like, your stupid Godzuki ass son. And there's the footnote about how it's like, that's like the worst thing you can call anybody in this world. like there's such a hatred for the Godzuki type character. And like, the Woofy's got like the silliest design with like this really goofy, exaggerated underbite and these like real scared eyes. And he's just sort of this dopey kid who like, you know, is his father's second in command only because he is his son. Like nobody likes him. Nobody trusts him. Nobody thinks he's capable. And his dad's exasperated. He has to deal with him, but he's still like, I wish I could make you into a real protege. Like, why don't you step up? Why can't you be more like me? And he starts seeing this like little boy who's.
I want to stop you there because I have a quick question before you continue. Since you have continued reading on, do they continue that story in like after they do?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, because I like this is I think one of the biggest mysteries that is presented in this book of like, who is this little boy that he keeps seeing? What is it? Is it a real person? Is it his imaginary friend? He keeps the always says like, I can dream myself into this place. So is this some kind of like out of body, like astral projection of someone or something else? Or is this the kid just having an imaginary friend, right? And I don't know, but please continue.
But yeah, this little boy appears, and his name is Lil Boy. And he's got like the little hat and the little shorts. He's this chubby, like round faced kid in little shorts. He's like, "Hi, Woofy, let's be friends." And he's like, "Woofy, your dad is really mean to you. I think we should play a prank on him where we put this one plant in his soup and then he's going to get sick. Woofy, it's going to be so funny. Woofy, you should do it." And Woofy's like, "I don't know, little boy. My dad might get mad." To have this, it's a takeoff on that like little kid who's just inexplicably in the middle of the kaiju action, like befriending a kaiju. It's a takeoff on that, but also this like psychological projection of like, is this the voice inside your head? Like, is this your darker side trying to convince you to really break through and like do something about your abusive father? That is a storyline that continues into the next volume. I really like it, and I'll say that I love that storyline, and I love what they do with the creature of Devil's Creek, who is that goat man.
Nice. Yeah, because so the Woofy was his name, right?
Woofy, yeah.
Woofy. He does end up poisoning his father, but in a way that he like explodes. And there's just like blood and guts everywhere. And then because he's the next in line, Woofy is like made like in charge of this gang. And he's sitting there just like, I'm like an 8-year-old. I don't know what to do. Like, so I thought that was really, really, really funny. As much as there is references to like different monsters and kaiju and all that stuff, they also make references to The Godfather and like stuff like that in there, which I thought was neat. But that is, I think, one of the biggest mysteries is just like, who is this kid? What is happening? But speaking of that kid, there was another thing that I liked that this book really, really did, is that when it went into the backstory of the warden and I don't remember her name, but again, the woman that was coming to appraise the prison.
Yeah, she's like the head of the prison system. I know, like, her name starts with an M. It's like a longer name. I can see it on the page, but I like can't conjure it in my mind right now. But yes.
So it does this thing. You've seen it in plenty of media comics or movies or stuff where it's telling you a story in like modern day time and then intertwining it with these flashbacks to help you like understand the character. And it is a like black and white, maybe a little like sepia toned flashback that is supposed to be like one of the that is supposed to be like one of the Gamera movies where these kids are just like inexplicably being like, but no, he's our friend. He's just misunderstood. When he stomped on the school, he wasn't trying to kill all of the kids. He was stopping the other monster from doing this thing, right? And like, you adults just don't understand. And I think what was neat about that one is that you think this is a flashback for the warden to help you understand him and where he's coming from. But then the flashback kind of reveals itself that of the three kids, there's a girl in there, and she turns out to be pretty evil. And this is not a flashback about the warden. It's about this woman who is coming to appraise the prison and like approve their budget. And you see this like horrific event that has traumatized her and made her into this monster that we see today. Right. And I liked that like bait and switch. But I also liked the reference to the like those old like Gamera movies where these there's just children like running around in the midst of destruction and the military and all of that stuff. Like that stuff was neat, and to like that is an interesting continuation like of those stories and stuff like if those kids lived in, if we lived in a world like that and something like that happened to someone where this monster you love got destroyed or killed or all of this stuff or who knows what, right? Like there's, you could turn out all sorts of different ways. Like I can see that happening. And then you take those, like that traumatic event into your belief system, into your job, into this, right? And that's how you end up this like mean old prison lady who's still like punishing these inmates, even though this already is their punishment. Like she's just overly mean. And I liked how all of that turned out.
Yeah, I do like that flashback sequence that you think is about Warden Kang, who's a character who starts out very harsh, and as the story goes on, he does soften up a little bit, and you think you're looking at this story that is an origin for the empathy that he does have for his monster inmates. Where it is these little kids who are like, no, the monster means well. Here, and like it's these kids watching like from a spaceship or something that they crawled into, like watching the monster like finally be able to escape. Like, okay, he's walking out of the city. He's going towards the ocean. You know, all the planes are down. Nobody's left to shoot him anymore. And they're watching this monster that they're rooting for, like finally trying to escape for freedom that they've been wanting the monster to have. And it's like, here he goes. Oh, he ate a bus. He stepped on another building. It looks like he did that on purpose. Like he's causing, even if he has the out, he has the way to just get out of this without any more conflict, without having to fight anybody. He can escape freely. He's still continuing to like eat and crush and destroy and harm. And then you see the little girl like hit some button in the spaceship that like vaporizes the monster. And she's like, he kept hurting people. I don't know if he was going to stop. She's like, I had to do something.
Yeah.
Like this is her turning point for why she has such a hard line against these monsters. She's like, I have to make sure like human destruction stops somewhere. And also like these monsters, for as much human empathy as we have for them, they are these massive things where, like, even if they were as good as they could possibly be and as innocent and pure, if they just literally took one step out of line, they've killed a dozen people just because they stepped on them. And like, you can see that that's some of the fear that she has. Like,
right.
Even in the best case scenario, there is so much potential collateral damage we are dealing with when we are dealing with these monsters.
Yeah. Man, like we just keep saying, there's so much in this book, and there's just so much detail into all of it. Highly inventive. I cannot recommend it enough, but I think that's all I have to say on Kaijumax. So at least for right now. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think there's good stuff to look forward to in the next episode. There's a couple storylines that are like continued and are introduced in the next volume that I read by accident, that I really look forward to talking about.
Hell yeah. Awesome stuff. Well, that being said, let's do a quick check-in on Bingo. I don't know if we're going to have much on this. Let me pull it up on screen. Oh, hey. Well, I have character who connects to computers.
Yep.
Mecha's on,
you got it.
Because there is the thing where he like is the one that did the destruction. Yeah. Okay, so let me see. Where is my highlighter? I need red. And
I have spaceship AI. And we've got characters like Chisato, who is this robot woman who has like a giant mech form that like a guy climbs inside her torso and pilots her around.
Yeah.
And she can go into space.
The ship does have an AI though, right?
Which ship?
I thought it did. Well, I get, because she is mostly a robot. I mean, I would say that's an AI. Like, she is kind of, well, that's a tough one, right? Because she is her own entity. Like, she is not like just like built into the ship. You know what I mean?
Well, also, like, if we were, like, do you remember Green Lantern, the animated series, and how Aya was the AI of the ship, but then also she built herself a physical robot body and she went out on missions with them?
Yeah.
This is kind of like that, but in reverse, where she's like,
right.
Yeah, she was a robot body first, and then she becomes this, like, larger vehicle that can go into space.
I say we put it down.
Okay.
I say why not? Because we
All right.
both
well, that
have
gives
it,
me another bingo.
Gives you another bingo, and it gives me a bingo as well. Because I have that one on my list too. So bam, there you go. Spaceship
I have 11
AI.
bingos, Kyle.
God damn it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I have 8. Anyways, I'm catching up slowly but surely. There you go. That is our bingo check-in for this week. As we typically do with bingo, we'll continue to do this for our end of the month stuff. But for our recommendations, we only do it on the first and last time. So let's get into recommendations. Melissa, if people liked this, what else might they like?
I don't have as much that's pertinent to this one, but if you like, I will say Mystery Science Theater 3000, because there's some episodes that are about like the hero that comes from space, and maybe there's a giant kaiju or a giant mech battle, or maybe it is just regular size guys in regular suits who are supposed to be regular size. But like they've got there's at least Invasion of the Neptune Men, where a hero comes down from space and there's just a random assortment of children who are there. And they're like, yeah, spaceman, yeah. And they're just in the middle of the action. And it's like, do you guys have parents? Why are you here?
That's great.
Digimon has some of that. I think there are some arcs of Digimon where they are larger scale, where they come through the digital world to Tokyo. They are battling in Tokyo. And again, the Digidestined, those kids just running around. Nobody can rein them in. They got to be in the middle of the action. Where else would they be? I have fond memories of watching season 1 of Prison Break, renting each individual DVD from Blockbuster.
I
back
will
in the day.
second you on that, with the caveat that just imagine they escaped by the end of season 1. You don't need to watch the rest of that show. I never did. Like, season 1 can really stand on its own. Like, you don't need to watch the rest of the show and what happens after they have escaped and then they are on the run in various ways. Season 2 made sense, but it wasn't as good, right? And then season 3, they're back in prison, but they're in some like Mexican prison, and now he doesn't have a plan, so he has to like make it all up to do all
new tattoos.
And it's like in and out, and they're on the run, and then this guy, it's just like that first season though was so good.
If only,
just imagine they escaped and that was it, and they lived happily ever after.
If only that show was made like 10 years later in the age of limited series, where you didn't have to run on Fox for like 22 episodes a season for multiple seasons.
Or even do it like an anthology thing where every season was a new escape. That would have been amazing.
Oh.
Would have been so good. All new character, like all that stuff would have been great. But yes.
All new tattoos. And then finally, I don't know, Con Air.
Okay.
Watch Con Air. Oh, tell me if I can classify this as a kaiju movie. Honey, I Blew Up the Kid?
I mean, maybe? Yeah?
Where there's just a giant toddler walking through the streets of Vegas and like just pulling neon signs apart. Con Air also ends in Vegas, so that's why thinking of one made me think of the other.
I think even the like Honey, I Shrunk the Kid stuff is like a reverse kaiju. You're then so small that stuff like spiders and ants are just these giant monsters, right? So good stuff with that. Let's see, what would I recommend? So if you want a just straight up prison story, HBO did a show called Oz. Just spelled O-Z, like the Wizard of. That show was fantastic. There's some great actors in there. There's some actors who went on to be in Lost that are in that, including the actor that plays Michael, as well as Mr. Echo.
Harold Perrineau.
Yes. They're in there. J.K. Simmons is in that show. It's a fascinating show. If you guys have seen all those insurance commercials where the guy's like, I'm Mayhem, and I do, and like, right, he's like holding
Mayhem's in it.
That guy is in it.
Wow.
That is in. It's a fascinating show. I ended up liking that more than I expected to. And it is just the ins and outs of the prisons. It's exactly what we saw here in Kaijumax, but it is played entirely straight, right? It's not meant to be a joke. It's not meant to be a caricature of it or mix it with something else. It is just a prison story. That show is fantastic. If you want more kaiju stuff, we've covered a few kaiju things here on the podcast. Most recently, we watched Destroy All Monsters. We watched that on episode 213 of the review show. Let's see here. We also watched the original Godzilla for episode 198. And then, let me go. We also did, Netflix had some animated Godzilla movies. We watched the first two because that third one hadn't been out yet, but we watched the first two of these like Netflix, like CGI animated Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
Way back when. What episode was this? That was episode 24. Wow.
Ooh.
That was a long time ago. but that is some kaiju content that we have covered here on the show as well. And then, of course, I myself am a big fan of like Neon Genesis Evangelion. I'm a big mech fan, so go watch Gundam, go watch Macross, all of that stuff. So yeah, I think that's a good one. I do one more recommendation that I want to make, which I probably could have saved. Net as I'm talking about this, I probably should have saved this one for the end. But I'll go ahead and say it now since I already started speaking. With the kind of cartoony nature of the artwork, go check out some of the work from Osamu Tezuka. Go read Astro Boy. Go read Buddha. Go like all of that stuff. He has a way of having these really, really fun, adventurous stories that are hilarious, but also tell these really affecting stories. And have characters that you get into and want to follow and just be like, man, I hope I hope whatever it is that they're in works out, or when it does not work, you're like, man, this sucks. Please do something different. I don't know what I'm gonna say. But yeah, like he has a really, really interesting way of telling these stories and switching up the genres while keeping this cartoony art style that just makes it fun. So yeah, go check out some of that stuff. But that's it for recommendations right now. Melissa, next week, spooky month. It's Halloween.
Spook month.
We do. We already have what we're going to be doing for this next week. So Melissa, tell us about what we're watching this next week.
I pitched you a couple horror movies and their sequels. Horror is a genre very defined by long-running franchises, and instead I gave you just one movie, a sequel, and then you're done. Maybe they'll make more in the future, but for right now, it's a 2-movie franchise. I gave you a couple of those. So we're going to watch Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You, which is a movie about a woman who finds herself trapped in a Groundhog Day type time loop where she's living the day of her murder over and over again, and she has to figure out who her murderer is and how to escape the time loop. And then somehow they made a sequel to this. And both of us were like, how'd that happen again? How's she in another time loop? So this is the answer. This is a question that will be answered. Happy Death Day. It's a horror comedy. It is a pretty well-rounded horror comedy. So check it out.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's what we'll be up to this next week. Like I said at the top of the show, we will be continuing with Kaijumax at the start of November and at the end of November. So yeah, we will be continuing along with this comic to see where it goes. And it sounds like we'll be jumping over to the women's prison and following some of the storylines of Woofy and stuff like that. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more of Electrogor and stuff like that. But maybe they didn't make it out of that giant explosion. Who knows? But yeah, up to some fun things here on the review show. Indeed. Well, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities, show where me and my brother Jams talk about weird old kid shows you feel like only you remember.
There you go. And you guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer. And of course, if you'd like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts on Twitter. So please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. In just a sec here, there's going to be some videos that you guys can go click on if you're on the YouTube version. If you're on the podcast, thank you for checking it out. Please go rate and review all that good stuff. This has been number 224 of the Whatnauts Review Show. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.